the first speaker. So I'll give the first sessions of the today webinar to Bu Arfidea Dwi Saraswati. She's founding partner of Aksetlaw firm is one of the fastest growing law firm in town and specializing in resources. And Bu Arfidea has been focusing on the mining since I met her maybe 15 or years or so. Yeah. So Bu Dea, we always usually call her, is one of the most knowledgeable lawyers in mining sectors. So the topic is very interesting. Yeah, the future of Indonesian coal downstream industry under the mining law number 3 2020. So the time is allocated 30 minutes, Bu Arfidea. So the maximum of the presentations, not more than 20 minutes, and 10 minutes for Q&A sessions. Okay, Bu Arfidea, silakan.
Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you, Petromindo Co-Asia, for the invite for me to join this very distinguished panelists or speakers in this prestigious event. To be honest, for me, getting the topic for coal downstream industry is quite interesting because the topic itself seems to be very newly developed. I guess maybe 3 months ago, we didn't really talk about coal downstream. We were talking about the law number 3, 2020 as amendment of the mining law, but now we're focusing on more specific issue. It's about the coal downstream. And during the preparation of the material, my team, assisted by 3 lawyers from our firm, I was quite surprised that to figure out that even though the timing since the issuance of the law number 3 until now has been only 4 months, but there have been quite a number of resources about coal downstream. It's like suddenly everything arising to the surface. The Ministry of Industry has their roadmap, and then the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources has their pointers under the draft government regulation to implement the law number 3, 2020. Now, to me personally, I'm still trying to figure out whether is this really the time for us to talk about coal downstream, or is this something that we must talk about now? Otherwise, we may be experiencing what Nokia versus smartphone, Android experienced 15 years ago. It's like you do it now, or you're gonna miss the train, or is it the train already arriving as yet in the Southeast Asia region or Asia Pacific region? Okay, now we move to the slides. As usual, we usually start with the list of existing regulations. This is only some of the list of existing regulations. Probably some of us heard, or most of us already heard about the new job creation bill that was passed only a few weeks ago, which included only 2 articles related to mining, but it shows it came with a really big hit, or not big hit, but big surprise. We'll talk about that later. And then, of course, the mining law from the 2009 until the 2020, the new one. Some government regulations as the implementing regulations of mining law. All these 5 or 6 government regulations, GR, now being revised under one consolidated government regulation, which partly we're going to discuss later also in the other slides. And then we also have studied the regulations related to fiscal facilities or income tax facilities, and some other regulations under the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources related to domestic market obligation and possibly the domestic development and utilization of coal. Next, please. Now, as we can see, next slide, yeah. These are the main topics of our discussions today. We're going to talk about the development and utilization of coal. This is the terminology used in the mining law, but actually this only means coal downstream and coal utilization. And then the incentives for the coal downstream or utilization, and then obligation to do the coal downstream and utilization. Possible export limitation, is it there or is it not there? We'll see. And then also some other tax allowance and sanctions. Next, please. Now, this is the main framework under the mining law, now law number 3, about coal downstream and utilization. It is defined as the effort to improve the quality of coal with or without changing the physical and chemical characteristic of the original coal. Is it really something new? In a way, yes, this is new because what was regulated under regulation before law number 3 was about coal processing, which is defined or regulated under GR 23, year 2010, that the holder of IUP, OP, or IUP, OPK, this is mining companies basically, they must conduct processing, including for coal, to increase or to improve the added value of the coal by doing it itself or under cooperation with other companies. And then those companies, before law number 3, must have what the license is called as IUP, OP, specially for processing, which is now already replaced by IUI, the industrial business license for industrial or manufacturing companies. And also in the GR number 23, it was mentioned that the license for this coal processing, i.e. downstream, is supposed to be issued by the central government or the regional government, which we anticipate that under the new GR, it will be issued by the central government under the new regime of the law number 3. Next, please. Now, what we see the main points under law number 3 is that there are some different treatments between IUP company and IUPK for continuation, or the former CCOW companies. The companies who are probably now still holding the coal contract of work, but they are extending the validity period and converting the CCOW to become IUPK for continuation. Because why? For IUP company, it seems that the downstream obligation is optional, while for IUPK continuation company, the obligation for coal downstream is mandatory. We can see this under Article 102, Paragraph 2, and under Article 169A, Paragraph 4. So the wording is may and must. And we can also see that for IUPK continuation, there are incentives for doing the coal downstream by they can be having validity period almost indefinitely for as long as the coal mine is still operating, which is extended 10 years every time by complying with the requirements. Next slide, please. Now, like in the previous law and the current law, but more elaborated in the current law, the kind of the downstream activities, both for mineral and now for coal, there are two methods recognized. First, by doing it as integrated business activities, So the same mining company doing integrated downstream business, or by having cooperation with third parties. Now, in the current regulation, basically, in the current draft of government regulation, which was introduced and socialized by the Directorate General of Mineral and Coal under MEMR just last month, we note that the coal downstream activities can be conducted either by integrated manners by the mining company itself, or by having cooperation with other parties. But the other party must be own at least 51% of the same IUP company. And also this 51% minimum shareholding requirement must not be diluted for as long as the business is ongoing. There may be some potential issues on this. For instance, if we're talking about utilization as an IPP, in many IPP projects, PLN or the state electricity company giving the award of power purchase agreement for certain companies under designation or assignment. In Bahasa, it's called penugasan, which requires that the PLN or its subsidiaries must have at least 51% shares in the designated IPP company. So there's already some kind of inconsistency how the 51% shareholding requirement can be met if the IPP company is owned by PLN subsidiary at least 51%. But we can discuss that later. And the second manner is by having cooperation also with companies who also doing the coal downstream, whether they are other IUP companies or whether they are companies in manufacturing or industrial companies. And the cooperation, we noticed that under the draft GR, the cooperation also recognize the utilization of coal for a non-related IPP company. But yeah, this remains to be seen in the regulation to be issued. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned earlier, there seem to be different treatments between IUP OP company and the regular IUP OP or IUPK OP company with the IUPK continuation or former CCOW companies. Because we can see that for CCOW companies, when they're applying for the IUPK continuation, it is one of the prerequisite requirement that they must provide also the plan for coal downstream and utilization. But we noticed that from the pointers of draft GR, it's interesting to see that it seems that the quantity of coal that is required to be processed or to be utilized as downstream business is not 100%. That means it seems that there's still a possibility for the company, the mining company, to sell part of the coal as it is, whether for export or for domestic sale, and the other portion that is obligated to be processed or to be developed domestically. Because the requirement is to provide the amount and the designated location of coal that is going to be processed or developed and utilized domestically. And next slide, please. Now, What is exactly called as the development or the pengembangan or downstream of coal business activities? Again, there seem to be a little bit of differences between what is regulated under Law Number 3 and later what we see from the pointers of draft government regulation. Here in Law Number 3, we can see that what is called as downstream coal is included coal upgrading, coal briquetting, coking coal, coal liquefaction, gasification, and also coal slurry or coal water mixture. While utilization is basically the same. It's basically for fuel for power generation. Next, please. And in the draft GR, we can see that they eliminated some of the category of development or downstream, such as the coal upgrading and coal briquetting, and also coal slurry. So they provide only coking, liquefaction, and gasification, while the utilization is the same. We can see how these differences, how they're in line with the current facilities or fiscal incentives or tax facilities that we're going to be discussed later on. But it is true that it seems that coal upgrading or briquetting or coal slurry is not mentioned many times anymore in other materials or draft regulations. Next, please. Now, this is basically this slide, and the next is relevant for minerals. But we thought we'd like to bring this into our attention to see the kind of analogy or precedence that has been applied in Indonesia, because mineral downstream has been in place for the last 13 years or so, the last 8 years, I guess, from 2012 mostly. And we can see that for minerals downstream, the government gives the guarantee for utilization of processed and refined minerals. They also give certain guarantees or incentives, such as the export facilities and fiscal and non-fiscal facilities for companies doing the minerals downstream. And also there are requirements that the minerals downstream must meet the minimum requirement by considering economic added value and also market demand. It means that the mining companies for minerals, they're obliged to do the domestic downstream business if the feasibility study has proven that the downstream activities is in line with economic added value and also meeting the market demand, because there is market demand for the products to be processed or refined. And it's also mentioned that the market demand also considers the absorption of products at certain level by domestic market and also international markets. These are the provisions that are not yet included in regulations, or perhaps in the draft regulation, that I imagine from the coal industry, at least we would want to have the same treatment or the same facilities, because we also want to have to make the government guarantees and make sure that there will be the market demand for the downstream coal products before the products are even being produced, to make sure of the profitable production. Next slide, please. Now, this is only, we get this information from the Ministry of Industry, and this is also in line with some information under the DGMC, the Directorate General of Mineral and Coal websites and booklet information. what are intended or what are discussed as downstream of coal business. This is more of the conversion of coal into chemical industries feedstocks. So as we can see here, for direct use, it can be used by power plants or by industry for the, I guess it's for the combustion purpose. And then for the conversion, this is more of the downstream activities. It could be liquefaction as liquid, and also for gasification as gas as chemical feedstock, and also for cokes, and then for active carbon. It's also mentioned about coal slurry here, and then for upgrading to make it a higher rank coal. Next slide, please.
2 menit lagi, Bu Dia.
Okay, so these are more of the types of products or the samples of the gas chemical feedstock as a result of the coal downstream. Maybe next slide, please. Now, this is what we discussed earlier, the form of coal downstream, and this is provided in the MEMR booklet just issued last month. What is the Indonesian government planning for coal downstream up to year 2023? Next slide, please. And then this is from year 2024 to 2030. We can see this later separately. And next slide, please. The remaining pages of the slides mostly are the information about what are the data under MEMR websites and booklet information about the planning of the government, or the basically roadmap that the government wishing for coal industry to develop. Next slide, please. This is the summary of the three slides earlier. Next slide. This is also more breakdown of the Indonesian government coal downstream plan. Next slide. And this is the samples of ongoing coal gasification projects. Ongoing as in discussions already started, MOU already signed, or FS is still undergoing, or construction is still undergoing. COD plan is in the next 4 or 5 years, but we'll see if it is meeting the target due to this pandemic. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, the export limitation for coal, for now, we don't see that in any regulation or any draft, but we do anticipate that the possibility of government may increase the percentage of domestic market obligation if there are more active investments for coal downstream, basically to secure the supply and raw materials of the coal domestically for the industry players who are doing the coal downstream. Next slide. Next slide, please. Again. Yeah, this is just the recap of the previous slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, and the last 2 items, I think that the government also has the power to give a certain assignment or designation to certain companies or entities to do the initial stage of coal downstream development and utilization. And later on, those entities or companies may have the priority rights if the downstream coal downstream project is going to be tendered. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the facilities under the law number 3, basically the extension that we discussed earlier for companies who are doing downstream coal activities. And also under the the job creation bill or law, which eliminate the obligation to pay royalty for coal mining companies who are doing downstream coal activities. Next slide, please. Now, these are basically the names of the business activities for coal downstream and their KBLI or their classification code numbers, and some regulations that also provides the tax allowance facilities. Slide, please. Now, these are the brief comparisons between minerals and coal that mostly we already discussed earlier. This is only to give easier review on the actual differences. And next slide, please. Again. Okay. Sanctions, we are not sure if there is any sanction or not due to the failure to do the coal downstream activities, because law number 3 does not provide any sanction. However, GR23 seems to provide sanction, but again, GR23 is in the process of being revised or revoked entirely. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the last slide, and we believe that there are still some inconsistencies in the law number 3 and in the existing GR number 23 that needs to be adjusted for consistency. And the second important part, that for coal business players, we need to have the security of the market availability for to buy basically the downstream coal products, whether it's for domestic and for export. And also we need to also consider what would be the effect of the current pandemic that is still ongoing, whether they're going to be a major step back for the next couple of years or not. Again, thank you for the opportunity for speaking in this event. I think we can discuss further in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.